I had a sales call this week with an agency that was doing $200,000 a month of revenue. And I found out on that sales call that they had spent close to $40,000 trying to recruit a sales rep to replace the founder completely. And it had not worked out at all. And the founder was still taking all the sales calls. And right now, I'm going to show you exactly what it was that they did and why it didn't work and what they should have done instead. So you can take that information, and when it is time for you to hire a sales rep, whether that's now or in the future, you can avoid making these mistakes because they are big ones. So let me tell you about what happened in the beginning. They tried 3 different avenues of recruitment, 2 of which were done for you. They paid someone to do it for them. And the other was DIY. They did it themselves. They ran some job ads, and there were mistakes that were different across the board on all 3. The first one was with a company called Seventh Level. Now, I'm not trying to name and shame here, but I think it's relevant because of the context that I'm going to cover shortly in the video, that I mention who it is, because the fact that it is who it is why it failed. Now, Seventh Level is run by a guy called Jeremy Minor. He's a big sales guy. They run this massive B2C and B2B sales training business. And what happened, according to the prospect, was that they had spent $15,000 to recruit somebody from them. That was the fee. And then that very same person demanded a $10,000 salary and commission. And then because they had paid the money and, you're already kind of in too deep, right? There's that sunk cost fallacy. They agreed. They paid the $10,000 salary for that month to the sales rep, and apparently they barely showed up to any of the sales calls. And then I think they just quit or were fired immediately, and it had cost them $25,000, and they had practically nothing to show for it. Now, the second thing they did was hire Closers.io, which is another massive kind of online B2B recruitment and sales training company run by Cole Gordon, someone I really like. I just want to state, but that does not mean that it wasn't a mistake, right? And it wasn't the right fit. And with those guys, I don't have the exact figures on how much money they spent with them, but I do know that they have like a sales kind of done for you sales training and recruitment service that's $12,000. At least it was the last time I checked. And I assume that is what they used because they had access to all the training, but they hadn't hired anybody yet. And they basically were like, yeah, this just hasn't really worked out for us. We got all this great information, but there's just no sales reps to show for it. And whether or not that was because they didn't execute on trying to get the sales reps from them, or whether Closers.io didn't like push for them to actually hire someone, I don't know. But one way or another, it didn't work out. And the third avenue they went down, the DIY avenue, was running meta ads to hire the person, right? Just running job ads with meta, which is a great approach, by the way. If you're a marketer, you'll know that it's very easy to find the right people on meta with how good the algorithm is, especially these days. So that's what happened, right? And let me tell you why it didn't work. So we're going to start with Seventh Level, right? Which is the most expensive mistake, the $25,000 mistake. Fundamentally, their core product is a sales method, and it's an EPQ, which is like neuro, educational, persuasive questions or something. I don't know, something like that. But my point being, it is a sales process. It is like a way of closing someone on a sales call, which is great. But that's not what this business need. They didn't need a better sales script, or at least they weren't paying for that in this particular instance. They might have needed it. But yeah, their core product doesn't solve the problem that these guys had, first and foremost. The second thing is that Seventh Level serve anyone and everyone. They're one of those businesses that are like, we work with business owners, we work with coaches, and I don't even think they specify as deeply as saying coaches. Like, they just work with fucking anybody who will give them money, which a business of their size that's pretty typical, right? A lot of people start niche, and then as they scale, they go broad. But the trouble with that is that in order for them to go broad, they have to productize the service, which makes sense because that's the only way they're going to get to scale the deliverables. And that means that there are going to be people who are unhappy and do not get delivered to in a fairly large percentage of them, even if that's 10 or 15% of people, you don't want to be caught in that 10 or 15%, right? That it doesn't work for. Specificity is key, right? If you run a niche business, if you target people with a niche with marketing, if you sell a niche product, if you understand that, being niche or niche or whatever you say in the US is important, then you'll understand that serving anyone and everyone isn't good, right? When it comes to trying to get your specific business results. It's just like, it's just a one size fits all, and it might not fit you. With Closers.io, right? Sorry, actually, I want to go back to that. I just want to say, just connect it to the whole point here. And what's testament to what I'm saying is that they serve anyone and everyone. They hired that business to help them, right? And then they gave them a sales rep who demanded a $10,000 salary or asked for it, whatever. Maybe they didn't demand it. But that is not in alignment with the kind of sales rep they needed, right? There are like this is like an online digital kind of sales done for you service business, right? B2B, the prospects business, right? And if you're in this online space, you'll know that if you're looking for like a high ticket closer in the online space to fill that kind of role, it's commission only. There's people who would have specific, high ticket commission only online sales experience who would be a great fit, who wouldn't demand a salary. They would actually go for commission only because they're thinking, hey, commission only or not, I'm gonna close deals. I'm gonna make loads of money. So that misalignment straight out the gate with the salary was already kind of like an amber flag at the very least. And then it turns out that they weren't a good fit just for the role as a whole. Maybe they've only ever done corporate sales or something. It's not the same, right? Just going back to what I was saying about the niche, it's just not the same. It's too broad. If you get a broad sales rep and put them into a niche business, they could be a great sales rep, but it won't work. And I've seen this happen multiple times with the agencies that I've worked in or worked with. So it comes from a place of experience. Anyway, going back to Closers.io. So Closers.io also serve multiple huge niches, right? They work with like coaches, agencies, info businesses, SaaS. They work with all these massive niches, which makes sense when you're trying to, grow your business to like 8-9 figures, which I know Cole Gordon is actually trying to get to 10 figures, which I'm going to talk about in a second because it's relevant to this. But yeah, there's just no specificity there. You need that specificity if you're working with somebody. I think it's super valuable. There's a good chance they've got a good product and a good service. I've not heard amazing things, but I don't really know enough about them to judge, right? But let's just say, it's pretty good. But pretty good isn't what you need when you're trying to scale a business. You need superb, you need excellent, you need like brilliant, right? And I just don't think that you can get that without specificity. Right? And these guys, just like 7th level, are just selling a broad thing. Great sales training, but broad. Probably great recruitment, but broad. Here are some sales reps that are probably good. Maybe one of them's got experience in the niche you sell to, but do they know the high ticket sales space? Do they know the online marketing game? Do they know the digital space, the make money online? I feel like all that context is so important. And I feel like that's the exact context that made me successful as a high ticket closer over the last, when I was doing it for like 18 months, when I initially got into the online space and, collected close to $2 million in cash. It was a massive advantage. I knew this space. I had a marketing agency. I knew all the online gurus and stuff. I knew the language. I knew what it was all about, right? And that went a long way. And I know some corporate sales guys who probably would have crushed me in that environment, who would have really struggled to get into this one. And yeah, just kind of following on from what I was saying about Cole Gordon's goals to hit 10 figures. He literally stated in an interview or podcast episode with Ryan Clogg. You can find it online. You're gonna have to go dig for the clip yourself, but he did say it, so you can go validate that. He said that the way that he's going to be able to scale his business, his recruitment business, to $1 billion is by going for fewer, larger clients, enterprise clients, like the biggest recruitment companies in the world do. Which means if you are not an enterprise-sized client, you are not a priority strategically for that business. Bottom line. So if you're a big bank like Barclays, and you want help with recruitment, they're probably going to go crazy trying to help you out because you're going to be worth millions, tens of millions to them, right, in LTV. But if you're just an agency that just needs a little bit of help, right, a couple of sales reps here and there, some training, whatever, they'll just give you like what they've got, which is, again, it's fine, but it's like that's not their focus. Anyway, don't want to rant too much. Shout out to Cole Gordon. I like Cole Gordon. I'm sure he would agree with me to some extent. He'd probably have some great objection handling over this, but you get the idea. The third thing that they did and why it didn't work was meta ads, right? They ran meta ads to find people, and I don't know much about what they did with meta ads. I don't know what ads they ran, what they said, who they targeted, how much they spent on the ads, but what I can kind of infer is that meta ads work the more work better the more specific you are, right? And if they had known really specifically who they needed, who they needed to hire, who the right fit would be, they'd already spent, $30,000 hiring these broad agencies to help them out, right? And I can only infer that they must have taken a similar broad approach, or at least not as specialized an approach as they needed when it came to advertising with meta ads. And if you know digital marketing and you know meta ads and you know that kind of thing, then you know that it works better the more specific you are. And if you're taking a broad approach, as we've just seen with the other two options they tried, it just isn't going to work very well. And it didn't. They didn't find very good candidates. So that's kind of testament to that. Anyway, so let's talk about what would have worked, or at least what I think would have worked, and I'm pretty damn sure about this. The first thing that would have helped this entire situation work is recognizing that the role itself that they were hiring for is niche and requires a niche person, right? That is what is the foundational layer of this. Because if they had recognized that, then working with Cole Gordon or working with Jeremy Minor, like their business is, or running, meta ads that weren't specific enough wouldn't have been an option, because it wouldn't have made sense to do that, right? Because they recognize that they need something niche and these are just broad solutions. The next thing that they could have done, and what would have made a big difference here, is not hire a niche recruitment company to help them, but it would have been to run those extremely specific meta ads with that niche profile locked in, targeting, whatever, super clear creatives. We're looking for a high ticket closer with specific online, marketing experience, blah, 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 B2B, not just like we're looking for like a killer sales rep or something like that. So it's super specific to precisely what they needed, right? Making it clear, you need to take over from the founder. We need you to kind of spearhead this, blah, 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 blah. And just really making sure that all the bases were covered as far as like what that person needs to look like, because Meta will put that in front of the right people, because the right people will engage with it, and then Meta will learn what the right people look like, and then it will continue to put it more in front of those people, and then you can affirm to Meta that, hey, yes, we're getting good leads through, and so on and so forth, and you end up having loads of people to interview, and hopefully someone, or multiple people, who are pretty good, right? And then the only kind of like I don't want to say like the last ditch effort, but the last thing you could have done, if that didn't work, if you'd recognized that it was a niche role that required a niche person, right? And you'd run extremely specific ads, like meta ads or any job ads for that matter, to find that person, and you'd interviewed people and you'd spoken to 10, 15, 20, even 30 people, and you hadn't found someone where you're like, this is going to be my guy or girl, right? Fair enough. Now find a recruitment company that specializes in this space. If that didn't work, I think that's a fair step to get to, because God only knows how much you spend. Like, I don't really know how much it costs to recruit people on with meta ads. I don't know what the average lead candidate cost is, but I doubt that $10,000 to find someone who's fucking amazing. I feel like it's got to be less than that at the very most. Like, I don't know, it ain't gonna cost you $40,000. It would have been a much, much better and more cost-effective process overall had they have done that. And then, yeah, let's say they spent $10K on ads, whatever. I feel like that's way too much, but let's just say they did. And then at the end, they were like, I need to find a recruitment company who finds, high-ticket closers that specialize in helping, marketing agencies that do lead generation between $30 to $200K a month. And they have a founder in the sales seat, or they have a sales rep that's, maybe not doing amazing or whatever it is, and they're just desperate to get some help with the whole sales department and the recruitment and the systems building and stuff, then they could have reached out to that person for help. And if you are looking for that person is me, in case you haven't figured that out by now. One thing I must say is that if you want help with any of that, or if you just want to talk about it, you can book a call with me. And also, if you want to avoid the situation where, let's just say you did all this and you find that perfect person, and then for whatever reason you hire them, perfect person with quotations, you hire them and it doesn't work out. They aren't this, A player that you expected them to be, despite all the kind of signs, the writing was on the walls. It looked like they were going to do amazing, but they didn't. There are a few different factors that kind of can come into things that go beyond just recruiting someone. And if you want to watch a video about those factors so you can help avoid not just hiring the wrong person, but also hiring the right person and it not working out, then you can watch this video next. And I hope you enjoyed this one, and I will see you in the next one.